All right. Are we live? Third party stream? Yes, we are. Welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you on this very special Sunday. We are continuing our sessions with Mr. Peter Terry and Miss Eileen Maddocks. This is our 2 p.m. session that we have after our 11 p.m. session that occurs every Sunday. This week's topic, as we've been speaking last on the Pentateuch, remains the same subject. Now, all of you have joined in today for the first time. Those of you joining for the first time, please, we recommend you to watch these previous sessions. That, again, these 2 p.m. sessions started a few weeks ago. It's a special series, and as it is one, there are some subjects we think you should take a look at on the same subject. A lot of questions people may have asked in the past that were covered. Of course, you may have them today. We still recommend that you also watch those previous sessions. With that being said, Ms. Eileen Maddocks and Mr. Peter Terry are prolific writers. They are both immersed in the writings of the religious sacred scripture. They are researching themselves, always discovering new things, and they're here to share some of that with you. With that also in mind, please save Clearwater Baha'is, clearwaterbaha'is.org, the YouTube channel Clearwater Baha'is, the Facebook page, the Baha'i Center of Clearwater. Please save these in your browser so you can revisit them. We also invite you, please, to find some of the books that Eileen has written online on the Old Testament. You can find them on Amazon. You can also contact her directly. She'll be happy to share her email. We've shared it before. She'll share it again. With that being said, Peter Terry as well. We are so happy as we are getting close to Christmas now, as a lot of the world is observing the birth of Jesus Christ, that we are, again, speaking in the Bible, discussing these subjects. And I imagine a lot of people are now picking up those Bibles and reflecting on the life of Jesus Christ. With that being said, we thank all of you who have joined us from the beginning or are still on this journey on Zoom. We look forward to this next session with Mr. Peter Terry and Miss Eileen Maddocks. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Peter. Welcome, Eileen.
Welcome. Do you want me to proceed?
Peter, Eileen, whatever your plan is, please.
Oh, I proceed. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to start with music, I think. I think if Jeremiah's got some music, he's going to play it. Remember?
Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. Yes.
Here we go.
If there's supposed to be audio, there currently is no audio as it's not being shared through Zoom. Just pointing that out,
Really?
Jeremiah.
Oh, yeah. It needs to be turned up a bunch, probably.
Well, Zoom has a setting to share the audio through the Zoom to the other participants, and that does not seem to be turned on.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to share it. We just need to continue.
Okay. It would have been good, but sometimes we need to roll with the punches. And I'm assuming that everybody can see this. It would have been good.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. And now I need to get all these photographs of people out of the way. Okay.
By the way, I love your choice of colors. Really nice choice of colors.
Thank you. I try to switch off on various color themes from show to show. Welcome, everybody. We are going to cover the book of Numbers, which is a fairly large book. It covers the desert years from the Exodus from Egypt to camping on the east bank of the Jordan River in readiness to enter the promised land, to take possession of the land promised by God to Abraham. Now, previously, I presented a program on the Exodus and set forth the theory that the Israelites entered from the west because of the vacuum created by the collapse of the Near East empires. However, for this program, we'll stay with the traditional narrative. The book of Numbers begins at Mount Sinai during the second year of the sojourn in the Sinai Desert. The book of Numbers is about counting numbers. The mind-numbing process of counting numbers began with a series of taking a census. Excluding the tribe of Levi, which was responsible for the tabernacle, the total number of fighting-age men per tribe is shown. The total, 603,550. Allowing for older men, women, and children, this would be a population of 2 million. As you will remember my comments about the numbers given in Exodus, these figures cannot be taken literally. And this slide is the only one that I will devote to the figures given in the book of Numbers. They are not the essence of this fourth book of the Pentateuch. Here is an example of the spiritual essence. The priestly blessing that is often recited today in synagogues and churches. Moses gave to Aaron and his priesthood the priestly blessing for all Israelites. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace." So they will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them. The journey in the Sinai resumed the second year, and the usual complaining set in. Moses' brother and sister, Aaron and Miriam, started talking against Moses because he had married a Cushite. Aaron and Miriam also questioned why God had only spoken through Moses. Hadn't he spoken through them also? Whoops. Moses, Aaron, and Miriam were promptly summoned by the Lord to the tent of meeting, where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. The Lord appeared in a pillar of cloud at the entrance to the tent. Listen to my words. When there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in dreams. I speak to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? These verses are immensely important. When there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. These words about a prophet among them were key. God had added 2 valid forms of receiving prophecy. So now there were 3. The first was the Urim and Thummim that only the high priest had access to, and now dreams and visions. Dreams and visions would not come on demand, and all forms of divination and spiritism were prohibited. The distinction was made between Moses, a prophet of God with a capital P, to whom God could speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles, and the prophets with a small p, often called the Hebrew prophets, who received dreams and visions. And when the Hebrew prophets began to appear 200 or 300 years later, they would deliver the words of God while in a conscious state. As Numbers relates, the Israelites proceeded to Kadesh Barnea on the border of the land of Canaan. And here is Kadesh Barnea, except there, it's working now. Here is Kadesh Barnea. 12 spies, one from each tribe, went into the land but brought back fearsome reports. Not lions and tigers and bears, oh my, but giants, the sons of the Nephilim, and fortified cities. Upon this report, the Israelites refused to take possession of the promised land. This incident is symbolic of the delusions encountered when working towards the promised land or spiritual attainment. There was lack of faith in God's promise. The Lord was furious and threatened to strike the people down. After a long argument with Moses, the Lord forgave the people, but still gave punishment. Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of those who saw my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, but who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promised on oath to their ancestors. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. Therefore, God condemned the people to wander in the wilderness until a new generation would enter the land of Canaan. That's where the 40 years in the wilderness comes from. The number 40 is a symbol for reaching maturity. And Miriam died at Kadesh Barnea in the 2nd year. Moses and the Promised Land. It was also in the 2nd year of the Sinai when an incident happened that was interpreted as the reason that Moses would not be permitted to enter the Promised Land. Let's look at this from different perspectives. Here's what happened, the background story. As usual, the Israelites were grumbling and complaining. They quarreled with Moses and said, "If only we had died when our brothers fell dead before the Lord. Why did you bring the Lord's community into this wilderness, that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? It has no grain or figs, grapevines, or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink." The Lord told Moses to take his staff and with Aaron gather the assembly together. When that was done, the Lord said, "Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community, so they and their livestock can drink." Now, on his own, Moses evidently spoke angrily to the people before he struck the rock. "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and the livestock drank. Then the Lord told Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." These were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord and where he was proved holy among them. Question: was Moses' show of impatience with his people really the reason he would not be permitted to enter the promised land? There are different ways to consider this. One way is to ponder the words of the preeminent early Baha'i scholar Mirza Abul Fazl, who wrote, "It is clear that the prophets and manifestations of the cause of God were sent to guide the nations, to improve their characters, and to bring the people nearer to their source and ultimate goal. They were not sent as historians, astronomers, philosophers, or natural scientists. Therefore, the prophets have indulged the people in regard to their historical notions, folk stories, and scientific principles, and have spoken to them according to these. They conversed as was appropriate to their audience and hid certain realities behind the curtain of illusion." Another approach to this episode of Moses being denied entrance to the promised land is Abdu'l-Baha's account, is the beginning of the creation of the universe and the manifestations of God that he gave in the tablet of the universe. There are some very interesting thoughts in this tablet. "Praise be to God, who hath ever caused his names and attributes to penetrate the degrees of existence, who hath made the effects of those names and attributes to shine resplendent, and their signs to be firmly established in both the hidden and manifest worlds." Then Abdu'l-Baha explained how these names and attributes were applied in creation. "He hath ordained these names and attributes to be the first and foremost origin and cause of being in the world of creation, and the source of the different grades of reality in the degrees of existence." These names and attributes were to be the building blocks of the universe, especially love. This tablet has an excellent section on love. When, through its power of attraction and propagation, the day star of names and attributes shone upon the hidden realities In the heart of the unseen realm, they issued forth, were spread abroad, scattered about, set in order, became the recipients of the grace of God and his outpourings, and were made to be the sole manifestations of the divine conditions and eternal signs. Everything was planned. Everything worked in harmony and oneness. Emerging from behind the veils, they appeared clothed in raiment of light, moving in the firmament of the unity of God, in orbits of sanctity and circles of glorification. This seems to describe the creation of the manifestations of God, who were pre-existent. Baha'u'llah wrote, "Everyone who is endowed with a clear insight will behold that they, the manifestations, were created before the creation of heaven and earth, and that this has ever been the throne of the merciful. They have no like in creation, nor any equal in the world of emanation. We have utterances concerning this station, such as are not befitting to mention in these days." Considering the nature of the creation of the manifestations of God and the circumstances of their creation, it follows that they were incapable of sin or disobedience to God. However, when they lived in a human body, they certainly experienced and expressed human emotions. They said what needed to be said as part of their teaching mission. How else could they have effectively taught the people? Consider some of the choice words that Jesus uttered to the Pharisees and Sadducees while he was baptizing individuals in the River Jordan. Confessing their sins, they were baptized by him in the Jordan River. But when he, Jesus, saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees coming to where he was baptizing, he said to them, "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath? Produce fruit in keeping with repentance." Jesus was known for his loving gentleness. Imagine the surprise when he used physical force to make his point, again, as part of his teaching mission. Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. "It is written," he said to them, "my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." Let's consider some key factors. As a manifestation of God, Moses was incapable of disobedience to God, to dishonor him as holy, or acting inappropriately within his mission. Any impatience or anger he showed towards his people was undoubtedly a teaching tool. Moses was already resident in the Promised Land, always had been. The Promised Land was and is a state of spiritual consciousness. It was time for the Hebrews to strive towards it with the teachings Moses had given them. It was time for them to strike out on their own, to leave the nest. By this time, Moses' ministry was over, and it was time for him to go home, to his heavenly home. "38 years later," the Lord told Moses, go up this mountain in the Abiram range and see the land I have given the Israelites. After you have seen it, you too will be gathered to your people, as your brother Aaron was. For when the community rebelled at the waters in the desert of Zin, both of you disobeyed my command to honor me as holy before their eyes. Well, we just discussed alternative approaches to this alleged dishonoring of God. Mirza Abu Fazl gives another thought-provoking commentary on why no manifestation of God is disobedient. And please keep in mind that Mirza Abu Fazl was the preeminent early Baha'i scholar, held in high reverence. And this is the book he wrote, Miracles and Metaphors. And this is where I took it from. We Baha'is believe that the manifestations of the cause of God and the repositories of his revelation are in reality the manifestations of all his names and attributes, and the dawning places for his verses and sayings. Not a single one of God's attributes become manifest on this primary plane save through them. Back to Numbers. And this was the final journey. Of the Israelites down to Mount Hor, where Aaron died and was buried, and then to the land of the Edomites and the Amorites, the land of Ammon, and the Moabites. Evidently, they won some battles along the way, and then they settled for a time in Moab, right on the border, on the east side of the Jordan. Balaam, a prophet for Israel. Balaam was not an Israelite, but probably a Canaanite. And he also was a renowned diviner, as well as evidently a believer in God. Balaam lived in the land of Aram in today's Syria. He and his donkey have mostly been regarded as a children's story. However, the 3 chapters about Balaam in Numbers are profound and also especially important today, while Israel is at war on multiple fronts. According to the book of Numbers, when the Israelites came up the east side of the Jordan River, they camped on the plains of Moab. This greatly upset the Moabite prince Balak, who sent for Balaam with this message. A people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the land and have settled next to me. Now come and put a curse on these people, because they are too powerful for me. For I know that whoever you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is cursed. Balak was desperate. Balaam was skeptical. And on this map, this is where the Israelites were camped, actually in the land of Ammon, right on the border with the land of Moab. And the land of Aram, where Balaam came from, is way up here in Syria. Balak sent Moabite and Midianite elders to Balaam with money and asked Balaam to return with them and curse the Israelites. But God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people because they are blessed. The officials returned to Balak, who sent more officials to Balaam, and probably with more money, to beg Balaam to return with them to curse the Israelites. But Balaam answered them, even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord, my God. Now, spend the night here so that I can find out what else the Lord will tell me. That night, God came to Balaam and said, since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you. Balaam received these first two messages at night, probably in a dream, and they are similar to the typical divine communications received by the Hebrew prophets. So Balaam saddled up his donkey and set forth on the long journey from Aram to the border of Moab with Ammon. All was going well until his donkey saw an angel of the Lord blocking the way. Balaam didn't see the angel. 3 times the donkey balked, and 3 times Balaam beat him. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and he said to Balaam, what have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? Balaam answered the donkey, you have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. The donkey said to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, but you have always ridden? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? No. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with the sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord asked him, why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared it. Balaam said to the angel, I have sinned. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now, if you are displeased, I will go back. And the angel said, go with the men, but speak only what I tell you. So Balaam continued on with Balak's officials. It's not clear why Balaam's trip was reckless, since God had already told him to go. At any rate, this is the story of Balaam's donkey. Now let's get to what's much more important. Balaam arrived in Moab and requested that 7 altars be built and provided with 7 bulls and 7 rams, 1 bull and ram to be sacrificed on each. This was done. There's one segment of scholarly opinion that believes that Balaam was practicing divination with the entrails of the sacrificed animals. Balaam was, after all, known as a diviner. Whatever the case, Balak would be very unhappy with Balaam's first pronouncement. A second time, a mountain was to be hiked, 7 altars built, and 7 bulls and rams sacrificed on them, and all again a third time, because 3 times Balaam refused to curse the Israelites. Balaam's first statement included, how can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom God, the Lord, has not denounced? From the rocky peaks I see them, from the heights I view them. I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number even a fourth of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my final end be like theirs. As Jewish history unfolded over thousands of years, the Jews did live in increasing separation from others. In recent history, the modern state of Israel has existed relatively alone among the surrounding nations, who were pretty much enemies intent on her defeat. Only in recent years has Israel achieved diplomatic relations with a few other nations in the Middle East. Balak was not happy, to say the least. He took Balaam to the top of Mount Pisgah, where he could see the Israelites camped below, and begged him to curse them. Before his second message, again, the altars, 7 of them, the sacrifice of the bulls and rams. After all that, unfortunately for Balak, the Lord had not changed what Balaam was to say, his part of the second statement. No misfortune is to be seen in Jacob, no misery observed in Israel. The Lord their God is with them. The shout of the king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. They have the strength of a wild ox. There is no divination against Jacob, no evil omens against Israel. It will now be said of Jacob and Israel, see what God has done. This is from the New International Version translation of the Bible. Let's look at the translation from the King James Version. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time it shall be said of Jacob and of Israel, what hath God wrought? How clearly spoken. Not only was there to be no enchantment or divination against the Israelites, but it would be said of them, what hath God wrought? Then Balak said to Balaam, neither curse them at all, nor bless them at all. Balaam answered, did I not tell you I must do whatever the Lord says? This verse, what hath God wrought, from over 3,000 years ago, was made globally famous when Samuel Morse sent it as the first telegraph message. Not only was this the first telegraph message, but it was sent on May 24, 1844. The Bab had declared himself to Mullah Hussein in the late evening of May 23rd, 1844. And he wrote his Surah of Joseph in the early hours of May 24, when Mullah Hussein was still with him. Was this a coincidence or part of the plan of God? The allusion to this time means the latter days or the time of the end, which started in 1844 with the return of the Christ Spirit, embodied in the Bab. What hath God wrought? These 4 words were sent by Morse code through wires from Baltimore to Washington, D.C., and laid the foundation for instant communication and the internet, the system of communication that would ultimately unite the Earth's people. Shoghi Effendi wrote, a mechanism of world intercommunication will be devised, embracing the whole planet, freed from national hindrances and restrictions, and functioning with marvelous swiftness and perfect regularity. Global communication was essential for global unity, the foundational principle of the Baha'i faith, to be achieved. Balaam's third and final statement included, "How beautiful are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. Like a lion they crouch and lie down, like a lioness. Who dares to rouse them? May those who bless you be blessed, and those who curse you be cursed." We need to ponder these words, these verses deeply, and think about their implications for today. The destiny of the Hebrews, later called the Jews, was being foretold, and that is a subject for a whole other program, not today. Balaam lived very long ago, over 3,000 years ago. Are prophecies from so long ago still valid? There is unity in time to consider. Abdu'l-Baha said, "In the world of God, there is no past, present, or future. All of these are one." So when Christ said, "In the beginning was the Word," he meant that it was, is, and shall be. For in the world of God, there is no time. Time holds sway over the creatures, but not over God. And that is why prophecies aren't hindered by time. Divine prophecies remain alive in God, so to speak, until the time is right for them to be fulfilled. The end. Okay, you are invited to put any questions in the chat. How did they think the power of cursing or how they cursed made a difference? Okay, look at it this way. These were a very superstitious people back in those times. And it wasn't until very recently, in historical times, that people began to understand that someone's curse could not hurt you. Back then, they believed in the power of cursing, and it was something to be afraid of. I mean, that was just their mindset. And they believed that if Balaam would only curse the Israelites, they could be defeated. Their thinking was that simple. A very superstitious people who never went to war, for example, without diviners telling them that they would win. And on and on and on it goes.
Eileen, if I may interject,
You may.
I'm a man who's been married a few times.
Mhm.
And I married a lady from Senegal, and this matter of being cursed was very, very serious, much, much worse than any sort of physical assault from anybody.
That's right.
People were really, really scared of this, and I discovered that when my wife became more and more convinced that she was being cursed by jealous relatives, and she literally descended into a psychotic state and had to and was picked up by the police and in another city and taken to a hospital. And we were by that time divorced, but it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with her previous experience in Senegal. So this is very widespread in Senegal. And my wife today is from Madagascar. And cursing in Madagascar is taken very seriously as well. So there are a number of contemporary cultures where you have this absolute terror
Yes.
of the power of evil, evil
Yes.
spirits and evil words. And
Yes.
so just for us to understand that it's unfortunately it's not behind us. It's still part of our lives, and we have to deal with this with actual people that we're going to encounter, and it will probably take a long time to root it completely out of the human soul, because it's such a convenient explanation for how you can get back at somebody who's done wrong. You know, because you don't have the money to do anything, and you don't have any weapons, and maybe you don't even live near them. But if you can curse them, that's power, especially if they know they've been cursed because they're terrified.
Now that's the power of the mind. And that's why Baha'u'llah is the divine physician to free people from that. And with witchcraft in the Middle Ages, and even more recently in Europe, people were very, very afraid of a witch's curses. So, we have to, just for a moment, put ourselves back in time into that mindset to understand why Balaam's curses, had he delivered them, could have changed Israelite history completely. But evidently, he did believe in the Hebrew God. He wasn't a Hebrew, but he was listening to God. We had a friend who was Italian and loved the Baha'i teachings, but was terrified of burning in hell due to her Catholic background, should she wish to convert. Well, in the Baha'i writings, I can't give you the actual citations, but it's in the writings in many, many places that hell is a state of mind. We can be in hell right here on earth in our lives here. And I think we have all experienced days where we felt like we were in hell because somebody done us wrong, and we felt very vulnerable about it. It's hard. People who believe in these fundamentalist, I'll call them, ideas, it is difficult for them to understand that hell is not an actual place. It's a state of mind. And God is all forgiving. I know fear instilled since childhood. I get it. And so many people are so afraid of dying because they're so afraid of the punishment they think they're facing. If they only knew the blessed love that they would be greeted with when they pass over. Just keep trying. Just keep trying, Layla, with your friend. And her own prayers, if she's willing, her own prayers to connect with a loving God, a forgiving God. Okay, I think Peter is prepared to talk today about the commandments. in many aspects of them. And I am anxious to hear what he has to say. And so I'm going to turn this over to Peter. Peter, are you live?
I am, and I'm coming right in. I'm going to share a document so that people can be looking along at the text that I'm citing while I'm doing that. And as I hope that I can do this with a minimum of confusion. Sometimes I have difficulty sharing stuff. Let's see now. No. Nope. Where are you? All right. Oh, let me see. All right. So, somebody ask a question, please, while I search for my document and share it with everybody, because for some reason it's disappeared from my laptop. It will just take me a minute because it's in Google Docs, so I can easily find it there.
Okay, I'm here if anybody would like to ask another question. And I do want to thank you all for coming on this holiday weekend.
There we go. No takers, huh? Okay, let's see. I'm gonna try to share here. See if I can get that document up. Here we go. All right, good. I don't know why it insists on taking up my screen with all kinds of other things, and the screen doesn't leave that much space to put what you want to put in it anyway. It's really rather annoying how computers do this. They're all default settings. They think we actually like this. All right. So bear with me while I find my place. My colleagues found it very confusing because at one point I kept, after running out of days in November, I went into December and I called all of the dates in December, November, which was very confusing because, of course, I was in December. So this is December 22nd, and these are the topics I'll be discussing today. Can everybody see this?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, good. All right. Is there, I'm unfortunately, this is the only screen view that I see gives you a very small page to look at, but I will scroll down it. Okay. And once, by the way, what I'm going to be doing is, since I often add to the material that I'm collecting, up until shortly before I present it, I'm going to, once I have finished the last session, I will post an updated version of this document to Clearwater and also send a copy as an email attachment to anybody who shows interest and gives me their email address. Okay. So, because I'm always covering more material than you could possibly remember, and I understand that. And I also understand that, I don't have time to read all the quotations that I wanted to share with you, because there are many of them. Okay, so the two matters that I'm going to be talking about here are the categories of commandments. And they're basically two categories of commandments that I'm going to talk about. Now, this is not from a point of view of being a lawyer, because of course you can categorize the commandments in all sorts of ways. You could say, you could organize them according to what the penalty is, or what particular sphere of life it pertained to, whether it was family life or it had to do with your work environment, or it had to do with relationships with people during a time of war. Or, there are many different sort of things that you could organize them, and there are plenty of books on the Bible out there that organize them in these more legalistic ways, and perhaps more logical than mine. But mine are actually based upon the Baha'i writings, because the Baha'i writings state that every religion has two kinds of commandments: eternal commandments, which are repeated in each dispensation by each manifestation, and dispensational commandments, which are only for the dispensation in which they are revealed. Okay? So I have to leave room for talking about the symbolic meanings of the Bible, because that is, of course, one of the most important themes covered in the Baha'i writings. But if for some reason we get tied up with talking about the categories of commandments and we run short of time, that's okay, because we've got another session next weekend and I could talk more about the symbolic meanings then. Okay, so I'm just going to ask Jeremiah, when would you like me to be done? Because I know that you have some things that you want to do.
If we could get through this, anywhere from 3:30 to 3:45 would be helpful. Thank you.
So 3:30 to 3:45 is going to be in half an hour to 45 minutes. No problem. Okay, right? Okay, so the eternal commandments, okay? The eternal commandments, I'm going to briefly describe some of those using only biblical references. There's no reference here to the Quran, to the Babi or Baha'i writings, or to any other religion. This is straight from, and also there are no references to any of the subsequent prophets. This is straight from the Pentateuch. So from the book of Genesis, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. Okay, that is an eternal commandment, never changes. Another eternal commandment: be fruitful and multiply and replenish of the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. That doesn't change either. That's renewed in every dispensation. Now, this might be a surprise to you. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Why do I say that's an eternal commandment? Because Jesus says it's an eternal commandment, and because Baha'u'llah says it's an eternal commandment. The original intention is that we are not just monotheist, and we are not just monogamous, but that we actually pick one partner for life and stick with that person. In fact, the Baha'i writings talk about sticking with that person throughout eternity. Now, of course, any one of these things, I understand there's a discussion to be had. We could go on for hours, but we don't have hours. So I'm going to talk about them very briefly, bring them to your attention, and then, God willing, we will have opportunities to talk about them in the future. Another one, an eternal, everlasting covenant, and is the one that's mentioned in the case of Noah, which is in the 9th chapter of Genesis. And this is after God has decided that humanity is just really useless except for Noah and his wife and his sons. And so he's just going to clear the decks. And he makes a promise, and the promise is that he has an everlasting covenant that he will not do this again, right? It's not going to happen again. And that there's an eternal symbol of that everlasting covenant, which is the rainbow. And by the way, we have huge rainbows up here in the mountains. And I took pictures of a rainbow that my kids and I saw while we were driving to town. We had to pull over and take some pictures because they were stunning. So the next eternal covenant is an eternal covenant that God made with Abraham and his descendants. He said, you're going to have lots and lots of kids. You are going to be the father of many nations. And I establish my covenant between me and you and your seed, meaning your children after you, for everlasting. This is really important for us to understand that he had an eternal covenant, an eternal covenant. And that means that it's current today and it will be current 1,000,000 years from now. Eternal is eternal, you know? And we won't go into all the details of what that covenant was. Then there's an eternal covenant with the offspring of Aaron, because Aaron was made the head priest of the Jewish religion by God through Moses, said, this is going to be your job. You're going to be in charge of the temple, of the sacrifices. Of course, they couldn't build the temple in the desert. So this is a long-term commitment. Temple wasn't built for a long time after the trip through Sinai anyway. But this was a covenant having to do with the worship, the process of worship. They are priests. They are high priests. And their assistants are the Levites. And so the Levites are actually a tribe because Levi was one of the sons of Jacob. But all of the Kohanim, the head priests, those were all descendants of Aaron. And to this day, the descendants of Aaron know who they are. And in every synagogue service, there are certain blessings they stand up and they give because they are the only ones who can give them. This is something they've kept going through now thousands of years. Another everlasting covenant was that Shabbat, in other words, taking one day a week and consecrating it entirely to God, that is an eternal covenant that he made with all of the Jewish people, with the children of Israel. By the way, this can be confusing if you don't remember the children of Israel are the children of Jacob. Okay, they're the descendants of Jacob. Jacob got renamed Israel after he had a battle with the angel of the Lord, because Israel means to struggle with God. And it's quite an extraordinary story that's been the subject of who knows how many sermons by who knows how many different rabbis and ministers and priests. In any case, it's an instructive thing because actually struggling with the angel turns out to have done good things for Israel. Now we come to the second category, the dispensational commandments. And I'm going to start with Adam, and I'm just going to go through them and give you ideas of the commandments that were specific to a particular manifestation of God. In this case, Adam, here we go, Adam. God says to Adam, I will give you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. For it shall be for meat. That means food. It doesn't mean meat. It means food. This is going to be your food. So what are they? They're vegans. Yes. Okay. Now this is why am I saying it's a dispensational teaching? Because in a minute we're going to go to Noah and it gets changed. And another teaching that was dispensational, okay? Because it only applied to Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve are in the garden, and God tells them you can eat from every tree except for one, and you can't eat that one. If you eat that one, you're going to die. And apparently they were going to set up to have eternal life in the Garden of Eden. And when they broke that law, they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, and they became mortals. And one of the things that's interesting about that, the symbolism of that story, is that ever since then, Jews and those who have been descendants religiously from Judaism, in other words, Christians and Muslims, have been trying to get back to Eden. That's what they've been trying. Let me get back to paradise. I want to go back there. That was the best place I could have possibly lived in, because I lived in harmony with God and with all creation. So now we're going to go with the covenant of Noah. Covenant of Noah, of course, you see there, here it says, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, okay? Well, so he's continuing that commandment in words, exactly. But there's some changes here now, okay? He says, every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb have I given you all things, all things. But the flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, ye shall not eat. Okay? So it's interesting. Those of you who are familiar with kosher food understand that the law of kashrut is based upon largely, you have to remove the blood from the meat before you can eat. And it is because of that requirement that observant Jews will not eat meat that has not been slaughtered in a particular way so that the blood will all drain out. Interesting, but this was a law for all people, because Noah was the father of this whole new generation of people, because all the others were eliminated because they were such violators of God's commandments. So you have that. So, and also in here you have the first law against homicide. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. So there are laws here. There are new laws under Noah. All right, that's the whole point. That's what the dispensational covenant. The next covenant that we have a record of is the covenant of Moses. And the reason why I'm skipping Abraham is because Abraham's covenant, even though it was particular to him, revealed specifically to him, it was an eternal covenant. And because it says it's an eternal covenant. And so, for example, one of the laws of the eternal covenant with Abraham is that all of your descendants, as a sign of their obedience to God, all of the male descendants will be circumcised. This is to be the sign of their obedience to God. And this was perpetuated in Islam, or renewed, I would say, in Islam. So in the covenant with Moses, I'm going to read you a few quotations that are talking about this covenant, the specific covenant. And this is the first time where it actually says it was written down. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that the Lord hath said will we do and be obedient. So they're making a commitment. They're making a commitment to follow the laws. The laws are revealed, the laws are written down, and the laws are read to them by Moses. Okay? And then Moses quotes God here saying, behold, I make a covenant before all thy people I will do marvels such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation, and all the people among which thou art shall see the work of the Lord. And he's talking about the conquest of this land that had been given to these people through Abraham, their ancient ancestor. And the extraordinary things that were going to happen in the course of them going into that land and settling it. Basically, they were going to go in and they were outnumbered vastly and outpowered, but they were going to triumph and be able to occupy it. And here I quoted this particular passage from Deuteronomy 4:13 because my colleague and I, Eileen and I, have had a couple of conversations in which she was talking that she felt that the Ten Commandments were the essence of the Torah, the essence of the teachings of Moses, and that in her estimation, they'd never been overturned by any of the manifestations. And it may well be that the Ten Commandments are perennial laws, are eternal laws. But I certainly wanted to point out here this very clear statement where Moses is explaining and saying his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, that is the Ten Commandments, you know? So we're really clear. This is the essence of all of these. There are 413 commandments in the Pentateuch, but this is the essence, 10 of them. And a few more references here that talk about the Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb, Horeb being one of the names of Sinai. The Lord made not this covenant with our fathers. It wasn't made with people prior to Moses, but with us, even us who are all of us here alive this day. This is pointing to the fact it's a dispensational covenant. These are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he had made with him in Horeb. So the covenant, the revelation of God didn't stop in Sinai. No, it continued throughout this journey that Moses and all of the Israelites were making. And so Moab is basically their last destination before they crossed over. So it's basically making the point, the word of God is the word of God. Wherever it's revealed, it's true. And there's a little quote, I haven't found another one like this actually in the Pentateuch. And maybe Eileen has, maybe somebody else will find one, but I was really struck by it. Yet the Lord hath not given you a heart to perceive, eyes to see, ears to hear unto this day. Because this is the same statement that Isaiah made over and over about the people of his time and prophesying about the future. And Jesus quoted them in the synagogue in one of his really most stirring sermons, which he reads a certain part of a chapter of Isaiah, and then he says, these words are fulfilled in me today. It's nice to have a manifestation make it clear to you, right? No monkeying around. And this was one of the things that Jesus talked about very often, is that I'm telling you things, but you just aren't getting it, are you? Baha'u'llah talks about this too. Abdu'l-Baha talks about this. And it's actually a pretty major theme of the Baha'i faith that we've got to wake up if we want to see the truth. You don't come to understand the truth and follow the truth by remaining in the same state that you were before you encountered Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah is calling for transformation. And that transformation is not, it's not voluntary. Let's put it that way. You know, I mean, sure, you can deny, you cannot get in deep into that transformation, but then, you know, you're really playing with fire. Because, and all of us have seen instances of people in our own lives, whether they were Baha'is or Christians or any other religion, where they try to go halfway into their faith, and it doesn't bode well for them. It really, it creates a lot of mental illness. And so anyway, let's go on to here. And it says, there's this understanding, this tradition in Judaism that all the books of the Pentateuch, including Genesis, were written by Moses. It's a tradition. Now, what was the original idea behind that? Probably that they had the same authority as the books of Moses. But there clearly are many, many passages, even in the books that were revealed at the time of Moses himself, that could not have been written by him. And how do we know that? Because they talk about things that he didn't witness. They talk about things that he wasn't even alive for. But there was some sort of written record from Moses of the divine revelation. And this is the reason why Jews have such confidence that this revelation is real and that it comes from God, is because they know it was written down very early on by a prophet. Okay, now what do we get? Let's see. I'm running short of time, so I'm going to go very quickly into the symbolic meanings. Okay? Now, the symbolic meanings of the Pentateuch, first of all, we have to ask the question and not assume that we understand this. We have to ask, how do we know that the Word of God has symbolic meanings? How do we know that it's not to be all literally understood? How do we know? Is it because we like it that way? Is it because we read things and we don't like the literal meaning? So we decide, no, it can't be that because I'm never going to accept that. Or is there some objective reason why we have to consider that certain words of God have symbolic meanings? Well, Baha'u'llah's explanation of this theme in the Kitab Yagan is based upon a verse from the Quran. And that verse of the Quran says, it's from the 3rd chapter, the 3rd surah. It says that there are two kinds of verses. One, the verses, some are very precise, clear, to be understood literally. The other ones are unclear. They can be understood in many different ways. All right? And he says, those people who are not obedient to God, particularly like the verses that are not clear because they can interpret them any way they want. And there he says, those with deviant hearts follow the elusive verses seeking to spread doubt through their false interpretations. So this is a warning. The warning is very clear, and Baha'u'llah reiterates it in the following passage from Kitab Yagan. This is towards the end of Kitab Yagan. It is evident unto thee that the birds of heaven and the doves of eternity speak a twofold language. One language, the outward language, is devoid of illusions, is unconcealed and unveiled, that it may be a guiding lamp and a beckoning light, whereby wayfarers may attain the heights of holiness and seekers may advance into the realm of eternal reunion. The other language is veiled and concealed. Now listen to what he says about why. So that whatever lieth hidden in the heart of the malevolent, that means the enemy, the person who's got bad intentions, may be made manifest and their innermost being be disclosed. Thus saith Sadiq, son of Muhammad, God verily will test and sift them. So then he says, none apprehendeth the meaning of these utterances except them whose hearts are assured, whose souls have found favor with God, and whose minds are detached from all else but him. And furthermore, he quotes two of the hadith of Muhammad. Thus it is recorded, every knowledge hath 70 meanings, of which only one only is known amongst the people. And when the Qaim, who is the Bab, shall arise, he shall reveal unto men that which remaineth. That means the other 69. He also saith, he speaketh, we speak one word, and by it we intend 170 meanings. Each one of these meanings we can explain. Of course, the assumption is you can't explain them. It's by divine inspiration. And here it talks about that divine inspiration. The people, therefore, must not allow such utterances to deprive them of the divine bounties, but should rather seek enlightenment from them who are the recognized expounders thereof, so that the hidden mysteries may be unraveled and be manifest unto them. We perceive, this is a crucial statement, and it comes like 3 verses before the end of the Kitab Yagan. We perceive none, however, amongst the people of the earth, who sincerely yearning for the truth, seeketh the guidance of the divine manifestations concerning the abstruse matters of his faith. In other words, the manifestations know for sure, and we should trust their testimony above that of anybody else. So, here's an example of some verses that have a literal meaning, but it's unexpected. And because it's unexpected, you might be tempted to think that it was not literal. It's interesting because the way that Abdu'l-Baha explains it is it has a literal meaning, but it's different from the traditionally understood meaning. And I'm just pointing out to you, it is from Some Answered Questions, chapter 12. It's a commentary on the 11th chapter of the Isaiah. You can read the whole thing. I recommend that you read the whole thing because I think that when you read the whole thing, you will have a much better understanding of how it is that scripture is to be understood. It's not that you can take a scripture that has a symbolic meaning and say, well, it's only symbolic, or it's only a particular symbolic meaning. You have to understand from somebody who actually knows objectively. The manifestation knows objectively, and so does whoever is appointed to speak on his behalf, which Abdu'l-Baha was. So and this is a very important passage here. This passage from Isaiah 11 says, there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots, roots, and the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, and so forth. And this quotation is believed by 100% of Jews to refer to the coming Messiah, and 100% of Christians to refer to Jesus. But Abdu'l-Baha says it doesn't refer to Jesus. It refers to Baha'u'llah. And he says the reasons why he gives for why it doesn't apply to Jesus, but applies actually to Baha'u'llah, is because it's talking about a day when, this is how he puts it, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie with the kid, and the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. This is all talking about a time of peace. There was no peace in the time of Jesus. Baha'u'llah has been commissioned by God to establish peace in the world, and it will be established. So where's the juicy symbolic stuff? Because we love that, right? Symbolic. I'm gonna astound you by something. Well, I was astounded, so I think you'll be astounded. There are approximately 6,979 references to the name of God, what Jews call God, call Lord, Adonai. Adonai means Lord. What Christians call the Lord, or some of them call him Jehovah. Jews don't pronounce the actual name of God because first of all, they're not sure what the vowels were. But I think it's really an excuse. Because one of the things that the high priest was to do on the day of Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place in the temple, was to pray using the name of God. So they knew what the name of God, how to pronounce it. You were just forbidden to do it. It was too holy. And in fact, even Adonai is considered to be too holy because of its close association with this name. And consequently, the most Orthodox Jews I know call God by this name, Hashem, which means the name. The name, okay? Because they don't want to say Lord. They don't feel it's respectful. All right. So here you've got 6,979 references to this name of God in the Old Testament. Now, I can't tell you exactly how many there are in the Pentateuch, but I'm willing to bet it's about, it's probably around 5,000. Most of the references are in the Pentateuch. So here's your first surprise. This is a quotation from the dispensation of Baha'u'llah. And it's a quotation where Shoghi Effendi is quoting Baha'u'llah, making a statement about himself. Okay? Now hold on to your britches here. He it is, referring to himself, he further proclaims, who in the Old Testament hath been named Jehovah, who in the Gospel hath been designated as the Spirit of Truth, and in the Quran acclaimed as the Great Announcement. Yes, that's a whole course. That's a whole course in itself. But it calls for looking at the text of the Bible in a really different way. In a way that the voice of God is always the manifestation of God. It's never God himself. God does not appear on earth. God does not speak to us on earth. It's always through the manifestation of God. This is the second quotation I want to quote to you that is a symbolic one. that calls for a symbolic understanding. There are no references to the Lord of hosts in the entire Pentateuch, but there are 200 references to this name of God in other books of the Old Testament. And why are these important? These are important because of what Baha'u'llah says about them. In one of his tablets revealed after the Kitab Aqdas, he writes, O concourse of the rulers and of the learned and the wise, the promised day is come, and the Lord of hosts has appeared. Okay? And another one from Gleanings, chapter 126. Is the fear of God is the shield that defendeth his cause, the buckler that enableth his people to attain to victory. It is a standard that no man can abase, a force that no power can rival. By its aid and by its leave, by the leave of him who is the Lord of hosts, they that have drawn nigh unto God have been able to subdue and conquer the citadels of the hearts of men. Another reference to Baha'u'llah as the Lord of hosts. Another is found in the tablets of the divine plan. Here, praise be to his highness, the desired one, that ye have become confirmed in the promotion of the divine teachings in that vast continent, raise the call of the kingdom of God in that region, and announce the glad tidings of the manifestation of the Lord of hosts and his highness, the promised one. And there's another one in selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha, number 17, which is even longer. Praise ye the Lord of hosts, for he riding upon the clouds hath come down to this world out of the heaven of the invisible realm, so that east and west were lit by the glory of the Son of Truth. All of these are references to Baha'u'llah. So here you have two words that have, up until now, had a completely different meaning and significance for people reading the text. And Baha'u'llah gives them a symbolic meaning, which opens a world of understanding. Now, here's some other, just a few that I found that I wanted to share. And what I've done is I'm quoting, I'm giving you the location of the quotation. I'm not quoting the actual source, the source text. So in the book of Genesis, it talks about the creation of heaven and earth in 6 days. Okay? And to this day, there are some Jews and plenty of Christians who believe that this literally happened 6 calendar days, okay, between Monday and Saturday. This is what happened, okay? Not only that, it actually happened in 5 days, Monday through Friday, and then on Saturday, God rested, okay? Now, this is Abdu'l-Baha in a talk he gave, it's number 79 in Promulgation of Universal Peace. He says, likewise, the statement that God created the heaven and the earth in 6 days is symbolic. We will not explain this further today. The texts of the holy books are all symbolical, needing authoritative interpretation. We go back to this authoritative interpretation. Why? Because otherwise we make up stuff. And if we make up stuff, it's going to show you the kind of the person that made it up. It's going to show you somebody who is making pretensions to having greater wisdom and knowledge than they actually have. So here's another one from Genesis 3. And a quotation from Abdu'l-Baha explaining, and this is found, he has an elaborate talk about the symbolic meanings of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden in Some Answered Questions, chapter 30. But in this one passage in Promulgation Universe P79 says, as to the record in the Bible concerning Adam's entering paradise, his eating from the tree, and his expulsion through the temptation of Satan, for that's how the snake was always interpreted as being Satan. These are all symbols beneath which are wonderful and divine meanings, not to be calculated in years, dates, and measurement of time. Another one is let's see. I'm running short on time, so I'm going to let you read most of these for yourself. Yeah, you can read the rest of them. But in any case, I've assembled a few things, and then I at the very bottom I put examples of other symbolic meanings which can be found in the other books of the Bible, the Old Testament. The Old Testament is called Tanakh in Hebrew. It's a short form for Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. And Torah is the 5 books of Moses. And then after that, you have Nevi'im, the books of the prophets, and then what they're called the writings. That includes everything else. And then also they're found in the Gospels. There are many, many cases of symbolic meanings in the Gospels as well, as Baha'u'llah masterfully explains in the Kitab Yagan and also in Gems of Divine Mysteries. So next week, I'm going to talk about chosenness, chosen people, chosen lands, chosen leaders, chosen governments. Okay? And I'm excuse me for my cough. I'm done for today, and I would suggest that if you have questions for me, rather than ask those questions today because of the shortness of time, I'm going to put in the meeting group chat right now my email address, and I would request that you email me. Be very happy to hear from you, and I will reply. I kind of live on the, I live on the internet more time than I'd like to admit. And then I wonder why my children want to be on the internet all the time, right? But please do, if you have any questions or any statements you want to make, send me an email. I'd be glad to respond. And otherwise, save them up for next week.
Thank you, Peter. Eileen,
Jeremiah, was I short-winded enough?
You did great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Eileen, any last comments before we close out?
No, just that it was a blessing to be here today. And golly, Peter, you had some really good stuff today.
Yep. So everyone, Eileen's email and Peter's email have both been put in the chat, so you can recall it from there. I will take and grab PDF of Peter's materials and put it on the website, so you can check back on the website. And you should, there will be a link for it there. And until then, we'll see everyone next week, 2 p.m., same time. Thank you all very much for your attendance.